Okay, so we are live. Hi, everybody. This is Steve Sapadowski, publisher of BayouBuzz.com. And this evening, I should say, we have Rob Manis and Christopher Tidmore, two of my friends and two of the most savvy political guys in the state, and even further than that. So, Rob, retired Colonel, Air Force, Christopher Tidmore, a columnist. And listen, Rob, why don't you go ahead and for a few seconds just give some background info, and then Christopher, go ahead. And by the way, those people who are watching were able to actually get your comments. So feel free to comment anything that you want to say. We'd love to hear from you. So yeah, please go ahead and comment. Rob, go ahead, please.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me on. Steve said I'm retired Air Force Colonel Rob Manis, and I'm the publisher of robmanis.com and host of the television show, The Rob Manis Show, on LifeSet TV. Good to be here.
Okay, thank you. Christopher.
Hi, my name is Christopher Tidmore. I'm the associate editor of the Louisiana Weekly newspaper, state's oldest African-American newspaper, at louisianaweekly.net. I'm an editorial columnist and a political columnist. I also host a radio show and have for many years for WRNO 99.5 FM. I used to be news director there. And it runs on that and WSLA from 8 to 9 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays. And I've had the privilege of having Steve and Rob on many, many times to deconstruct Louisiana national politics. I'm looking forward to tonight.
Okay, super. So I already see, let me just put this up, Lisa, just to show you what it's going to look like. So Lisa is already ready to go. So those people want to comment, please go ahead and comment. We're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, on 3 different channels on Facebook. We have over 100 people watching so far. So let's start with Rob. Rob, a lot going on. Let's first tackle, I guess, the issue that you really want to talk about the most. Go ahead. Go at it.
Well, there's a heck of a lot going on. And, I want to talk about the lack of unity in this country, and that the Biden administration, in spite of the president, wanting and desiring unity according to his words, his actions just aren't leading down that path from what I can see. And he certainly isn't any help from the Democrat Congress, who seem to take, 5 or 6 actions every day that from folks' perspective that are in the opposition now aren't very unifying.
Okay, Christopher.
Well, I would point out that Joe Biden is a Democratic president, and as much as there's a call for unity, he has to do certain things that he ran on. And I would say something about the quest and call for unity. Joe Biden, for better or for worse, and I'm not a defender of the administration, I have some criticisms of what they've done so far, but I will say he's talked more to members of the opposition party, particularly in the Senate, in the last 3 days than Donald Trump did personally in the last 2 years in office. I'm talking about a variety of members of the upper house, to the point where Joe Biden actually said, I feel like a senator again. And it is a testament to the fact that he's, and the recognition that his one swing vote could go either way, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, that he's seriously entertaining the Republican counterproposal on COVID relief, and watching that, while he's holding out for $1,400, after all, that's all that Donald Trump asked for. It's nothing particularly else. He's already effectively signed away the minimum wage, a major priority of progressives, in a package, and he is negotiating, and he seems highly reluctant to go forward with reconciliation. So that's a symbol of unity. He is, after all, not a Republican. So the fact that he's trying to get Democratic priorities through doesn't shock me. The fact that he's talking to Republicans, taking seriously their concerns, is both a testament to unity and a testament to the fact that he knows Joe Manchin votes with the Republicans about 50% of the time.
Okay, so Rob,
I wasn't talking about bipartisanship, though, Steve and Chris. I'm talking about unifying the people, the American people of the country. And that's what Joe Biden was addressing. And his actions just are not unifying. He kills the Keystone Pipeline, which is is already destroyed, upwards of 15,000 American union worker jobs. He rolls back all of our border protections, and I don't know if you just saw the breaking news before we came on, but 11 Iranian immigrants have just been captured trying to cross the southern border of the United States. None of that is unifying or protecting of the American people and our economy. And that is what I was hoping to see from him, not necessarily a partisan unification or bipartisan unification, because I don't think there's any hope there. It's all a bunch of kabuki theater anyway. But I'm talking about actions to take care of the American people and make sure that the American people who didn't vote for him think that he's their president too. And I just don't see that happening, whether he's a Democrat or a Republican. And that's what's sad for our country.
Well, Rob, I would simply answer to you and Steve on that. And I say this as a supporter of the Keystone XL pipeline. As a Louisianian, it's very important for our refineries and Gulf Coast refineries. Having said that, Joe Biden did run from the very beginning of his thing on eliminating the Keystone pipeline. That was enacted by executive order by Donald Trump. It was a major campaign priority. He merely reversed it. But here's what he has done, and this is important. There's a major move by progressives to make sure Joe Manchin does not become the new chairman of the Energy and Commerce, the Energy Committee in the Senate. Joe Manchin, on the other hand, is a huge supporter of the Keystone XL pipeline, of drilling in Alaska, of drilling on federal lands, of pretty much every Republican energy perspective, much like, say, John Breaux was back in the 90s. And because of that, it is very possible that Joe Manchin, who has said he wants to bring back the XL pipeline, could vote with the Republicans, get it out of committee, get it on the floor, and have 51 votes to do that. And so what I point out is, if Joe Biden was the separate, divider in chief, as some on Fox News are calling him, and I am a Fox News correspondent, but some are saying that, I would point out that Joe Manchin would not be the incoming chairman of the Energy Committee for that reason.
Okay, let's take just for a second. We're going to look at John Bond. How can Biden be stopped? He's been in office for 2 weeks now, and some people want to stop him. Can you believe that? Let's
Sure.
How about this one? Stephanie Lutz, stop Biden and his cronies, please. Merle Mulkey, politicians need to stop pulling the wool over people's eyes. They work for us. We want term limits. And this one here, Kathy Bell, sure wish we knew, I think, how to stop Biden is what she's responding to. And this one's a little bit longer. Lee Evans, it feels like we're in a communist nation with a one-party system, and one party that opposes them is considered criminals and not worth listening to. Let me throw some out to you about that, because I think that comment, you can flip side that, whether it's communist or fascist nation. I know that people who are, say, not that crazy about Donald Trump believe that his administration and that he was headed into fascism. We now hear a lot of the people here, as well as elsewhere, saying that Biden is moving us into dictatorship fascism. I mean, how can we both be so wrong about the same issue? Who wants to take
Rob,
that?
you want to start with this? Do you want to start with
Sure.
that?
I mean, I'm shrugging my shoulders, Steve, because you can understand why folks that didn't vote for Joe Biden may be saying some of those things, when it was Joe Biden that said, if you even sign one executive order, you're kind of being dictatorial. He signed like 47, and he's killing, I think it's upwards of about 100,000 American union jobs, a lot of them now. So folks are kind of shaking their head going, what do we live in an authoritarian society? Now, does every administration do that? Sure. And you go back and look at the numbers. I think Trump did 1, and Bush 2 did 6, and Obama did 8, something like that. Don't hold me to those numbers, but they're around those levels in their first few weeks in executive office. So folks are are confused because on the one hand, Mr. Biden speaks out of one side of his mouth during the campaign in his inauguration speech about unifying the American people. And on the other hand, he takes his pen out and he starts destroying their jobs. And these aren't $20 an hour jobs. These are like $50, $60, $75, $100 an hour jobs. They're really good paying jobs that pay a lot of taxes that Joe Biden, we know, wants.
Okay,
So,
Christopher, go ahead.
Let me put everybody at ease. Donald Trump wasn't a fascist. Joe Biden is not a socialist nor a communist. Let's just basically say that. I would say, Donald Trump wasn't a fascist because he wasn't competent enough to it, and Joe Biden isn't a socialist because he doesn't really have a direct belief in anything. It's an old-style poll. But having said that very cynical comment, let me back up for a second. In the first 6 weeks of the Trump administration, there were 12 major executive orders that went out from the Trump administration. By the end, there was 162 of varying beyond, this is National Groundhog Day. Every presidential candidate says the previous presidential candidate abused executive orders in our imperial presidency. Donald Trump said it consistently about President Obama. President Obama said it about President Bush. President Bush said it about President Clinton. The power of the office is too particular not to utilize the actual use of the executive pen, and it's a tremendous thing. And you can't blame Joe Biden, since most of these executive orders were reversing executive orders signed by Donald Trump. So it's not exactly key on this. But I'm going to come back to something, and it boils down to we can't expect the new administration to suddenly give up their policies of the previous administration. A lot of Democrats, I would hear this constantly. I have the rare thing of being a talk show host on a conservative radio station, on a Fox News station, and at the same time being the editor of a rather liberal newspaper. And I'd hear a lot of my Democratic friends come in and say, "I can't believe it. Donald Trump is going after immigrants, building a wall, doing all these things." And I would point out to him, well, he actually ran on that. Are you surprised? Yeah, he won. So that's what he ran on. That's why he got elected. The fact that he's doing what he said. Joe Biden ran on getting rid of the XL pipeline. He was very blunt. This wasn't some secret thing. This was the very height of it. I personally, as somebody who has a little bit of an environmentalist bent, don't think it's a terribly effective way of reducing carbon imprints on sands, because all that's going to happen is you're going to put this oil on freight rail line cargo lines, and it's not going to actually reduce it. Having said that, it's a cause célèbre for progressives in the Democratic Party, and it's something that he ran on. And to be shocked that he did what he said he would do, this is what we ask politicians to do. You can't just say, "I can't believe he did what he said he would do when he get elected to office." That hypocrite. No, please, folks.
Oh, come on, Chris. Most of them, Donald Trump was unusual in that he kept campaign promises. Most of these politicians run on things that they never intend to do. So let's be clear here. Joe Biden doesn't have a mandate. He's got a 50-50 Senate, and they lost seats in the House to the point where folks are seriously talking about the Republicans being able to take the House back again in 2022 if they can hold their act together and not attack each other like they're doing right now. It's a tough thing. But I got to keep coming back to the jobs, though, man. The jobs. This man is destroying jobs at the stroke of a pen. He's doing things like letting the Chinese corporations, which are all run by the People's Liberation Army and the Communist Party of China, have total control over those companies, put hardware and software into our national grid system. He reversed an order by Donald Trump in order to do that. That is ridiculous, and it's going to harm our national security. It already is, the impacts of Chinese-run companies in the United States of America. And it's just unfortunate that he sees a need to sign 47 executive orders in the first 2 weeks of office just because he wants to reverse policies that Mr. Trump had, whether they were good policies or not, and whether they kill good paying jobs or not. Doesn't seem to matter to Joe Biden, and that's not very unifying. And I'm going to keep going back to that because I'm tired of this nation being divided by race and sexual orientation and all that crap.
Christopher, hold on now.
Wait.
Wait. Okay, so what I'm going to interrupt and just say that I've posted a link. I'm going to post another link. Rob, I'm going to take issue with what you said about the inconsistency. In terms of what he actually said, and you can look at the link, and I'll post an AP link. He didn't say that he was not going to be using executive orders. He didn't say that if he did so, that he would be a dictator, or that people who use executive orders are dictators. What he was saying was that he's not going to legislate. He's not going to legislate through executive orders. Now that's a difference. Reversing policy of, say, Trump, who reversed Obama's policy by executive orders, and Biden is doing the same thing. So, yeah, I just want to throw that out in terms of a distinction, and we can debate that later on.
But I want to say one thing before we get to the next comment.
Wait a second. Let me. You're challenging me, Steve. Let me just clarify what I said. I said that Mr. Biden said if you use one executive order, that seems a bit dictatorial. I didn't say he said it would be a dictator. Other people
have
those
though.
kinds of things.
But other people are saying that.
So I get it.
Yeah.
But that's the same thing. He is legislating with executive orders, and you know that. Come on, let's not play the semantics game here.
No.
That's what's happening, and it's to a greater order of magnitude than any president in modern history. Even Obama didn't do what Joe Biden is doing.
I will say, Rob, if one point, let's use the example you're coming, the Keystone XL pipeline. Part of the reason Donald Trump moved the authorizations is because the authorizations could not get through the Senate to authorize the Keystone XL pipeline and the cross-border authorizations, which normally would be a legislative process. So he went around it. He actually has that authority under Trade Promotion Authority to do that. But he legislated. He legislated something that Congress wouldn't do. And I want to address your jobs point real quick. I firmly agree with you. This is going to cost jobs. But then again, Donald Trump ran on trying to stop Chinese excesses and dumping on the U.S. market. He put tariffs on that he knew would create retaliatory tariffs by the Chinese that would lessen our soy, grain, and other agricultural exports that ended up costing the same number of jobs, in many cases very high-paying jobs in the agribusiness sector, as the Keystone XL pipeline. So it's saying that Joe Biden got rid of jobs. You got to also look at Donald Trump theoretically got rid of jobs because both of them kept their campaign promises, and that should be a good thing. We should actually hold our politicians to keeping their promises.
Well, I want to know what those numbers were because I have a brother-in-law that's a farmer, and I was in the farming business the first half of Mr. Trump's term, and we didn't lose any jobs. Now, what we did do is have a really big drop in the price of corn because the Chinese weren't buying any for a little while, and then they started buying it again, and we had so much inventory. And that is due to Donald Trump. But you know what? Those of us who voted for him accepted that because it's time to hold China accountable. They are our enemy. They are not a near-peer competitor. They are our enemy as much as the Soviet Union was the enemy. And this messing around and letting them operate on our stock exchange while not having to meet legal requirements that every American company has to meet and mess around with our national electric grid, which is at risk, high risk anyway, because of a lack of attention that's been paid to that infrastructure, is absolutely going to harm national security. And not one person in authority has taken the challenge up to get Mr. Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and his brothers' connections to the Chinese Communist Party thoroughly investigated and have them taken aside so that they can't use executive power like Donald Trump was taken off the table many times vis-a-vis things like the Russiagate investigation and everything. And we need to do it this time because the Chinese really are a much bigger threat than the Russians were.
Okay, guys, we're going to shift gears. Yeah. Chris, we're going to shift gears. By the way, those people watching, please go ahead and continue your comments. Also, please like this. Would love for you to like it. Please go ahead and share the video. Would love to get as many people as possible to watch it. If it's successful, would like to do it again. So I'd like to show you one of the comments here because I want to move into a different direction. One that I think that everybody has been kind of interested in the last couple of weeks. Here's a comment. It says, so much proof. This is from Sherry Weigel. So much proof of corruption and nothing happens, evil continues to prevail. Uphold the Constitution. And so the reason why I am throwing it out is because it segues into a different issue, and that is impeachment. Impeachment with the capital I. And so we're heading to, within a week, less than a week, we're heading into impeachment 2. We all have different feelings about it. Let me just make my comment about my feelings. Number one, I do not want impeachment. Number two, I want censorship. Number three, I want President Trump to own up to the lies that he said throughout the last 3 months, and move on, because I think that there's no way the country is possibly going to come together at all if the country believes that Biden is not president, should not be president. I think that's the greatest damage that anybody has ever done. And I don't want him impeached. I just want him to answer and just say, look, what I said was not right. Because, I think everybody really looking at the facts know that what he said is not right. And I'd like to move on and turn it over to Rob. I'm going to come back with a comment later, but go ahead, Rob.
That's a big statement that you're saying on a couple of levels. One is
Sure.
The First Amendment. The President of the United States has First Amendment rights as much as anybody else. And this charge that he incited this riot that happened up at the Capitol building on January 6th just won't stick. We know that 45 senators have already voted to say it was unconstitutional anyway. Chief Justice Roberts is not even going to preside over it because he doesn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. But my real question is why do you say that what the man said about the irregularities and the potential fraud was a lie? I've seen the evidence, much of it. And I'm not talking about Dominion machines changing votes and all that crazy stuff. I'm talking about the unconstitutional changing of election rules by the executive branches in some of these states. I'm talking about these strange numbers of votes, which are just astronomical and hard to believe as far as what Joe Biden got. And even the total turnout numbers are extremely high and way above and beyond even what Barack Obama got in his first election, which were record-setting. So we have documented irregularities. We have documented cases of individual voter fraud by the thousands that were not lies. None of these cases were thrown out of court based on the merits of the evidence that was presented. Not one of these cases were thrown out of court based on the evidence. They were thrown out of court based on standing or the lache, I believe is what it's called. What's the term, Steve? You're an attorney. That you got there too late. That is not on the merits of the evidence. The evidence was not heard in these cases except for one out in Nevada. And the judge actually said the evidence was solid, but he didn't think it was going to do any good. So,
okay, Christopher, go ahead.
You're just incorrect to say that they were lies.
Okay, well, I'll respond after. Go ahead, Christopher.
Let's start off with the fact that Donald Trump hasn't said he's wrong in over 50 years, and I don't think he's going to start now. So let's just what you're asking is forget the presidency. He's never done it, even when he's been wrong, even when he's declared bankruptcy. It's never happened. Never going to happen. So forget it. That's not going to happen. Second, let's be blunt about this. Impeachment's going to fail, and censorship fail. This is something that we discussed in my radio show with Hy McHenry on 99.5. Rob pointed out very accurately. I think there aren't the votes for either impeachment or censorship in the Republican caucus, not publicly. I used to be, as you both know, a Capitol Hill staffer, and I was also a correspondent on Capitol Hill. And I know many of the staff still. They were junior staffers then; they're senior staffers now, and they freely tell me that their bosses would easily they have 17 votes in a heartbeat if it were a secret ballot. But because every Republican is worried about a closed primary challenge, and you're already seeing it against several of the 5 Republicans who voted against that that aren't retiring, that you're not going to see that. But I'm going to say something very particular, and it boils down to this. And Rob is making a point about, and we'll get into it. He's made points about postal voting, not there being irregularities, the rules being changed in medias res, where you didn't have to have an address on when you came through. But I think there's something that hasn't been pointed out. And what hasn't been pointed out is the fact that the simple numbers say that if Donald Trump had not gone on a jihad against postal voting, he more likely than not would have won Georgia, probably would have won Wisconsin, and certainly Arizona would have been up there. Why do I say that? There were 24,000 Republicans, mostly over the age of 65, who voted in the primaries for Donald Trump, or voted in Republican primaries. I mean, he won 95% of the vote, so I guess they voted mostly for Donald Trump. They voted 24,000 Republicans, mostly over the age of 65, who voted there, who did not vote. We know this for a fact in the general election, even with these turnouts. Now, you look at Georgia, that's 12,700 votes is the differential. It's even less when you get to the John Ossoff, Purdue race. And so you've got a situation where these were postal voters, elderly voters who didn't vote. One of the things our friend John Kuvion of JMC Analytics, you frequently have on, Steve, points out is that up until this presidential election, in Southern and Sun Belt states, particularly in Florida, Georgia, and Arizona, postal voting was a net positive for Republicans because they have an older population. When you throw in the stat that there was a 3-to-1 disapproval of voters over the age of 65 with Trump's handling of the pandemic, and the fact that there was real fear of getting sick, and you throw in the fact that postal voting was something, you start to get to a thing that Trump, if he hadn't gone after postal voting, probably would have won the presidency. After all, when you really do the calculations, to get 269 electoral votes was about adding another 38,000 votes in 3 states total. It's you ended up with, we thought it was 20,000. It's more like 13 or 14,000 in Wisconsin after recounts, about 12 or 13,000 in Arizona, and about a little under 12 in Georgia. In that case, that's 269 electoral votes, another 10,000 for the 2nd district, and all of them can be said for postal voting. So this is where I get into the whole irregularities argument. You can make an argument very succinctly, and Rob's correct. The rules were changed by many offices without legislative approval, and there's real questions. Here's what you can't say. Very clearly, in my mind, that those votes would have overwhelmingly gone, if they'd had addresses or whatever the different parts, would overwhelmingly not have been for Joe Biden. I believe that Donald Trump, frankly, benefited from getting some of those postal votes that didn't have addresses, because it tends to be elderly voters who are trying to vote but afraid to go to the polls. And that's the one part about the irregularities argument I don't get in. Frankly, it's one saying, hey, my voters probably wouldn't have voted, but therefore the other voters would have then, therefore we won the election, which is balderdash if you look at the stats and the history.
Well, Chris, since we can't get a signature audit on any of these mail-in ballots, we're never going to know the answer to that question as to how many of those votes would have gone to Donald Trump or Joe Biden. And that is considering all the questions, and with this unique year, with all of this mail-in voting, it's never been done before, and in a year when we've usually seen 3.5 to 3.6% of mail-in ballots be thrown out, and we have less than 1% of mail-in ballots being thrown out in this election. There's just so many questions. Why can't we get a full 100% signature audit in those 6 states? We couldn't. You could get recounts, you could get audits of the ballots themselves, but you couldn't get a signature audit. And these are Republican-controlled states, which is very interesting. What are they afraid of? I mean, Ted Cruz is being accused by AOC of trying to get her murdered, which was a lie, by the way. She wasn't even in the Capitol building, but just because he wanted to get an audit done. I mean, come on, guys. What are folks afraid of? You know, I'm all for Joe Biden being president of the United States, but let's give the people what they need to have confidence in it. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't cost any more than the trillions of dollars we're already spending on wasteful spending anyway.
And the simple answer to that question is No, good. I am all for transparency, doing a signature audit, going forward. Here's where Mr. Cruz or Senator Cruz was off, and it's simply this: the Constitution is very specific. When a legislature authorizes electors to vote, that's it. These were Republican legislatures in Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia that authorized the electoral slate. In theory, in constitutional theory, a legislature could go ahead and say they could award the electors to whomever they want. Fortunately, there are state laws that stop that generally, but there's nothing in the federal constitution that doesn't allow it. And since they authorized those electors at that point, that meant on the 20th, by the 20th of December, Joe Biden was president of the elect of the United States and president presumptive. And that's the whole little kabuki dance that happened on the floor of the Senate. That's what was so ridiculous about it, because Ted Cruz, of all people, a constitutional lawyer trained at Harvard, who knows this, knew that what he was doing was little bit more than political pandering with no constitutional back. And so did Josh Harley, who is basically followed the same course of constitutional study.
But the difference now is you've got the Democrats who are in power that are saying men like Hawley and Cruz and others who are only doing what Democrats have done 4 or 5 times over the last 25 to 30 years, which is formally object to electors. They're now saying they're terrorists and they're responsible for murder and all kinds of craziness that further divides the American people. And nobody is going to think Joe Biden is legitimate unless we get some answers and a simple signature audit, as Mr. Cruz asked for, of all of the mail-in ballots would have provided an answer. Whether you like the answer or not, at least we would have had an answer.
Okay, so Rob, I want to answer, and then we'll move on to a different subject. I do want to reply and just say this, that in terms of, some of the states like Pennsylvania, they actually, the reason why that case failed in the Supreme Court is because the legislature actually did vote, and they actually decided the system that was in place, and they wanted to change it after the election. Okay, they could have tried to change their own votes before the election, but they didn't. So, I mean, that's the problem that you have all this misinformation. And let me just say this, okay? Do I think that there was fraud? There might have been, but you know what? This president, you mentioned the First Amendment rights. The president has a right to say whatever you want in terms of First Amendment rights. That's right. And I don't disagree with that. But everybody has a responsibility to do things and say things that are correct, that are honest, that are valid, that are true, that are not deceptive, and that are not going to cause people to get so emotionally angry that they're going to storm a Capitol building. And so, what Donald Trump did was he said, I want to say, a zillion times, that's my favorite word, zillion times. He says, zillion times there was voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud. His attorneys never said that. In fact, in the most recent filing just yesterday, his attorney never said fraud. Now, you tell me, what was the thing that we heard all the time? Voter fraud, voter fraud, voter fraud. You know that's going to get people angry. And where were the words from the attorney? They don't exist. And so, the president has a right to say what he wants, but if you're not going to be responsible, and if the lack of your responsibility is going to cause damage, and we can debate
Steve, all the last 4 years of people like Nancy Pelosi saying the election was stolen, and Hillary Clinton saying the election was stolen in 2016, and 4 years of President Trump's supporters being attacked as deplorables and maggots and all kinds of craziness that's going on. And even today, now there's a big move in this Democrat Congress to make people like me into a domestic terrorist. Hell, I wasn't even in Washington, D.C., thank goodness, because if I had been, I'd probably be tagged going through every airport through facial recognition, because those are the facts that we're getting now. is that Trump supporters are being tagged going through airports for facial recognition, and they're getting extra searches and extra screening and those kinds of things. Those are just facts. And you know what? The president believes that he had the facts and he said what he believed. That's his right and his role and his responsibility to do that. I think he believes that the election was stolen from him, just like Hillary Clinton believes. So don't tell me about that. If you want to hold him to that standard, you have to hold the rest of them to that standard. Hillary Clinton can be impeached after the fact. If we're going to impeach Donald Trump after the fact, now Hillary Clinton can be impeached after the fact.
Can I say something?
Pelosi can be impeached for saying those kinds of things. You have to have the same judicial standard and legal standard for every American citizen, and that is not what is happening in this country. And that's what people are really upset about. That is what people are really upset about. And Donald Trump really has little to do with that. But Democrat leaders like Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi have a lot to do with it.
Okay, Chris,
Colonel, I accept your challenge. I accept your challenge because there's a person who would not accept a challenge, and that is Joe Biden. You pointed out accurately there were Democrats who challenged the awarding of the electoral college, Maxine Waters being one of them. And when that happened, the president of the Senate, who happened to be the vice president of the United States, Joseph Biden, came out and said, overruled, Donald Trump has been elected president. There was no fraud. This is over. He said it very publicly and consistently said it throughout the next 4 years. So when we get right down to it as a level of integrity, you could paint the picture of every Democrat across. The thing is, you can't paint the picture of Joe Biden that way, who did accept
I never said anything about Joe Biden.
Donald Trump's election. And I will point out something. Donald Trump won by almost in the key swing states by about the same margin as Joe Biden. Joe Biden might have gotten 7 million votes on the side, but that's not what elects as a president. Electoral votes do. 306 electoral votes, roughly 40 some odd thousand votes in the key states. And so it's a very parallel election. You would think Donald Trump would have the integrity to say, okay, this is the one guy who said, I won fair and square. It wasn't a Russian conspiracy. It wasn't bots. It was the fact that we had disaffected voters, the white working class, the industrial Rust Belt that was put away that elected me. I at least can give him the respect that if he gave it to me, I gave it to him. But giving reciprocal respect and giving reciprocal loyalty is not exactly one of Donald Trump's strong suits.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears for a second. You mentioned Representative Waters. So let me just, I'm going to do something kind of interesting. Bear with me.
Stand by, Steve. I got a light problem here.
Okay. So let me shift gears for a second. Guys, this could be kind of interesting. Let us go with, I'm going to screen share for a second.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm back.
Okay. So, okay, here, let me go and play this.
I'm afraid we can't hear anything. So.
Yeah, I don't hear anything.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I apologize. Let me do that again real quick. I do apologize. It's my first time using this new technology, but I did make a mistake there. So let me try again. I'm going to share the screen. Bear with me, and this time I'm going to share the audio. Okay. So let me go and share the audio for this one. Okay, share the audio. Ready? Let's go.
If we have a sea of people, if we shut down the streets, if we shut down everything, if we flood the Capitol building, flood all the government buildings, go inside. These are public buildings. We own them. We own these buildings. We own the buildings and we pay all the people that work in the buildings.
Let's make sure we show up wherever we have to show up. And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station. You get out and you create a crowd. And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and put that up there just for Rob. And
I missed the first part of that. All
Okay.
I saw was the Maxine Waters piece.
okay.
That's all I heard.
really?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, it was to say that what she said was, look, you should show up. She said this last year.
Who was it?
I'm talking about Green. I'm talking about Representative Green. Talking about showing up at the Capitol, and just it's your building, and you should just go in there and show up. And I wanted to make that in relative comparison to the irate Maxine Waters, because I want to be fair here. Obviously, you had one person being very calm, you had another person, really sort of stirring things up. So the reason why I brought it up is that some really fascinating is going on right now, and that is that Miss Green, or Representative Green, and is not at all being sanctioned by the Republicans, but the Republicans want to sanction Miss Waters and also want to sanction some of the other people who are the liberals, but not Miss Green. And I just find that really interesting because Miss Green has said some really wild stuff, just like Miss Waters said some really wild stuff. And
But that clip
Yeah.
you just played, you said all she said was, "It's your building. Come to the Capitol. It belongs to you." I mean, that's pretty tame compared to what I've seen AOC and Maxine Waters and Anna Presley and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib say. Oh my goodness! I mean, they're talking about incitement to violence, and it happens. People go find folks and put pressure on them and threaten them with violence and run them out of restaurants and those kind of things. But isn't that what Green said? Just, it's your building, show up.
I
Well,
would,
go
I would,
ahead,
I would,
Christopher,
I
yeah.
would, I would
I
point
mean,
out
my
that
goodness, look at the Kavanaugh hearings. There were people all over those buildings showing up and sitting in people's offices.
Rob.
AOC led a crowd into Nancy Pelosi's outer office and nobody got shot.
Rob,
And they
I
sat
would
there
say-
for hours.
It's interesting you mentioned Nancy Pelosi's office and getting shot, since that's something that Congressman Green has called for on several occasions. But I'm gonna make.
I've never heard that. I've heard people say that she said that, but I can't swear that she said that.
I can show you links
I'm not
on
going
this,
to defend Marjorie
but
Green
yeah.
on this show.
and I'm not gonna and I think that's good, and I respect you for it, and here's why. There is an equal opportunity hypocrisy going on both sides that we in the press should not give into, and I'm watching our colleagues on MSNBC and Fox and everything in between basically be on either side, and it basically boils down to this. On the one hand, you have Republicans saying, everything that these people have said, a Democrat has said. And then you have Democrats saying, well, there's a moral difference between storming the Capitol and stealing and killing people and storming streets and killing and stealing people. And at the same time, this is what we have to come out and say. Incitement to violence is incitement to violence is incitement to violence. There is no moral justification for a Representative Green or Representative Waters calling for either one of them. And this is a moral equivalency we should not allow on either side. And I'm very happy to say, in the midst of this recording of the show, that one of the few people who pointed us out on the presidential level, Liz Cheney, is going to be keeping her position as head of the House Republican Conference that just came through, because she's one of the few people who said, what the left did in allowing and excusing some of the calls to violence in the summer protest, Black Lives Matter, was wrong. What the president did in incitement and those who stood at the Capitol rally was wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong however you do it. As elected officials, you have a higher moral authority, which is to say you can peaceably assemble, but you can't go steal things and kill people. It shouldn't be that complicated, but our polarized partisan environment has made it so.
Okay, so I'm going to shift gears for a second, one more time, and let's use this one here. Okay, so bear with me. Let me present this. Okay, so here's a image of Margaret Taylor Greene as Democrats move forward. The House Republican leader is punted, and so the Democrats are going to, as I understand, they're going to remove her from her seats.
From the education committee,
both education and
labor,
also
labor.
That's education, labor, and also I think she's on a budget committee. I believe it is.
Budget committee,
yeah. Okay, so here's
a very key position. A very key position.
It is.
This is a very dangerous, another dangerous precedent. These sham impeachments is one, and now this is another one. This is going to invoke all-out partisan warfare. And guys, I'm an independent right now, and I think I'm going to stay one because I left the corrupt Republican Party in Louisiana. So nothing is ever going to good is ever going to come of this if they continue down this road, and it looks like they are.
I would simply say that Congresswoman Greene's stripping of her committee assignments honestly wouldn't be happening. This is the part that's not being told. If, frankly, within the Republican caucus, there were enough people who basically are allowing it to happen. Yes, for those that are going to email me and say, the Democrats are doing this, no Republican is supporting it.
No, the Republicans are letting it.
They're letting it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Rob's right about it. What's happening is the Republicans, because the woman is a kook when it comes to QAnon, all this is a very efficient way to get her silenced. And at the same time, blame it on the Democrats. And
it's for things that she said before she was elected, apparently, what I'm hearing, not after she got elected and sworn into Congress. She hasn't said any of these kind of crazy things.
She has. There's been several occasions where she said some very loony stuff. But I'm
after she was sworn into Congress?
After she was sworn in.
2.5 weeks ago.
Yeah, no, after she was elected, that's for sure. But the point I'm getting at in all of this is that there's a lot that we report as if it's a horse race, as if it's some kind of back and forth game. And the fact is, I don't care what Kevin McCarthy came out and said, we're standing behind her, she's learned her lesson, so on and so forth. The fact is, he had a back channel movement with Steny Hoyer, and he said, execute her, get rid of her, do what you have to do, and you're going to beat us. And if anybody doesn't realize that, because there's only 4 seats separating the Republicans and the Democrats in the House. The Republicans can do a lot to basically gum up the works, but they're not going to do because they know how toxic it is. And to be honest with you, I'm not totally ashamed of this. The fact is the Republicans have to do a better job of policing their own ranks, just like Democrats do. You've got to,
I'm sorry, Chris. The Democrats have 5 of the most radical, jihadi, anti-Semitic, crazy people in their caucus that I've ever seen in my life that they allowed to be elected and reelected. I'm sorry.
I'd point out there's been a few Republicans that have been kind of off the kilter, but you're not wrong, Rob. You're quite correct. The fact is, and this has been the real problem. The two parties have reached a point because of, and I'm going to say this, thank God we have the open primary in Louisiana. Some might disagree with it. Rob might, having gone through it. I don't. And the reason is the closed primary, I think, is the fundamental problem in America today. It even more than term limits. And I'm a supporter of term limits. It's because you can get into a situation where a very small group of ideologically charged people determine the entire election effectively in these gerrymandered districts where there is no competition. And when that happens, you end up drawing of the extremes. What happens in states like Louisiana, it's not 100%, but basically there are no closed primaries. If you're a Democrat, a Libertarian, Independent, a Socialist, Green, or Republican, you can vote for a Republican, Democrat. You can vote if there's just Democrats in the field for the one that appeals most to you, or just Republicans in the field. And that, we've ended up with David Duke, we've ended up with some crazy people, but we've also ended up with some very sane politicians that are able to work across the party lines. And that's part of the reason. Other states would not produce a John Bel Edwards or a Bill Cassidy for that matter, because you couldn't have a pro-life Democrat or a moderate Republican. It wouldn't happen.
Okay, so let me just take some of these statements real quickly. People storm the Capitol because they're sick of Democrats running the country. Trump had nothing to do with it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Trump call in the National Guard? Actually, the answer is no. He didn't call in the National Guard, and I think that's really the worst offense.
That's not accurate.
Well, wait,
That's
no,
not
it
accurate.
is. No, it is
Yeah,
accurate.
The
Hold on.
Secretary of the Army is delegated that authority by the President of the
No.
United States, and
He
he
had-
called in the National Guard when it was requested.
When
When it was requested, the
When?
Washington mayor did not want the National Guard, and the few that she got at the behest of the Capitol
Rob,
Police Chief were unarmed. But when the call was made on the day of the 6th, Secretary of the Army McCarthy has delegated the authority by the President of the United States, and he called them in. So that's the accurate statement. Look, man, you can argue with me about a lot of things in politics, but not in command authorities and the Department of Defense.
So,
I know
Rob,
what I'm talking about.
Rob, you realize
Those are the facts.
Wait, so
it's not accurate.
Well, okay, it is accurate. Okay, it is accurate that, yes, it is. It is accurate that they came in about 2 hours after the chaos started.
That's not what I said wasn't accurate. What I said wasn't accurate was that the President of the United States didn't order him in, and that's not true.
No,
his direct delegate took care of the problem.
I don't disagree. No, what I'm trying to say to you is this. Okay, you talked to the governor of Maryland, okay, because they were trying, the people in the Congress were trying to get the president to act, okay, but what he did was instead he tweeted while Vice President Pence was at risk of losing his life, or at least being attacked.
First of all, you're overblowing that. The FBI has said they don't have any evidence that anybody was going to be taken hostage or there was any intent to murder anybody that was in elected office in that Capitol.
That's not.
They came out and had to say that.
Right.
That's not true. It's not true.
Why in the world is Trump?
Mayor Bowser denied the ability of the National Guard to be there and denied the request of the Capitol Police Chief every time, and so did the Sergeant at Arms of the Senate and the House, and both of them have resigned since then. There's a lot more going on here than just to lay this at the feet of the President of the United States, who had very little, if anything, at all to do with what happened in the Capitol.
Steve, may I?
Just 1 second, Christopher. In just 1 second. My point is this, okay? At 109, Trump's speech ended, okay? Roughly an hour and 45 minutes later, he sends out a tweet butchering Pence, okay? Because Pence didn't do his business, okay? Because Pence thought that what Pence was doing was the appropriate thing to do. That was not the unlawful thing to do. And Trump, and at least 30 minutes after the attack,
the attack started at 12:40. The attack started at 12:40.
No, there were different attacks going on.
Ended at 109.
No, we're talking about different attacks.
The facts don't line up.
No. Wait. Okay.
Here's a fact that does line up.
There was the west side of the Capitol. There was the east side of the Capitol. Okay. The attacks on the East Capitol, okay, started earlier. But the major attacks on the West Capitol, okay, that started about 20 minutes prior to when the Senate and the House decided to call shop. The problem is that the president, during the time that these people were heading out trying to find safe harbor, the president was out there tweeting things that were injurious to the vice president of this country, and he and Rudy Giuliani were trying to call senators to try to get them to delay the vote. Was he concerned? Was the president concerned at all about what was going on at the Capitol, where his congressmen and his senators? Right. And to me, that is the issue.
Gentlemen, you have no idea.
Gentlemen,
you have no
actually,
idea.
We do.
You have no idea what information
Rob,
the president of the United States had and when. You know that he was still speaking 20 minutes before when all of this started kicking off. You know that. So you have no idea what information he had and what his decision.
I do. I've done
it will come out eventually. Eventually, it'll come out. But at this point, you have no idea. We don't even know who planted the pipe bombs and who planned this attack. At this point.
Here's what has come out. The Atlantic magazine did a team coverage of what happened, minute by minute reconstruction of the time between the end of the president's speech and the storming of the Capitol and the first tweet and the second tweet. And here's what we know. At least 4 staffers were informing the president after he returned to the Oval Office, into the White House, watching the events that were transpiring on television, that there were placards coming in that were calling for the murder, essentially, of Mike Pence. And at that moment, and for the next 45 minutes, the president of the United States sat there watching. Some say he was laughing. Some say he was a little excited. What we do know is he just sat there. And that is the important part of this. His own vice president, he knew for a fact, his own vice president, people walking in with things.
Chris, we've been doing this for 4 years, man. We've been doing this for 4 years, putting up with the BS that comes out of the White House about Donald J. Trump and what he was.
That's not relevant, Rob.
That is relevant. It's relevant because
what Chris said.
Chris and you are putting things on this man. And look, you put me in a position to defend Donald Trump, and I don't even like the guy.
But what you're doing is
let's be fair about the facts. Right. The fact is the riot started before the man even stopped speaking, and he said people to go to the Capitol, be peaceful, cheer on your Congress, and be patriotic. That's essentially what he said at the end of his speech.
Rob,
politicians use the word fight, and they use words like that all the time. And if you're going to hold that standard to this guy, you got to hold it to every guy. And the same thing with the election results. If you take every politician that's ever questioned the results of an election, every single one of us is going to be put in prison for saying something in public about the results of an election that we've been involved in. I've said it myself. Questioned it myself on more than one occasion. So, look, guys, I hear you and I understand you, but we're just comments just now based on hearsay coming out of the White House that for 4 years has been just absolutely pitiful in all of the lies that have come out of that staff in the White House.
Okay, let's see.
There's no film evidence. There's no film evidence of Mr. Trump doing or not doing anything. The only evidence you have really is the tweet.
Well, yes, you have the tweet, and also you have a phone
where he
call.
Said, Go home.
You also have a phone call during a time. You have a phone call during a time where Rudy Giuliani was trying to get one of the senators to delay things so that they could get a vote in tomorrow, the next day, which was, I think, the Thursday. Let me just respond real quickly.
That's politics. That's political.
At a time, that's politics at a time. Okay. So
you've obviously never been on a battlefield and seen the fog of war or experienced it. Okay. That's exactly what we're talking about here. And eventually the truth and the facts will come out. But what you're talking about, I guarantee you, are probably not the facts because people are saying that it happened. And those have been lies coming out of this White House, the Trump White House for 4 years. And the people that voted for Donald Trump, they're not going to, everything you're saying is falling on deaf ears.
Here's a fact.
I believe that. Let me read this. And Christopher, I'll let you go ahead and finish this program out. But I do want to read this. Joey Gurdon says, did you, Bablowski? It's Sapodowski, okay? I think you might be able to read. But see the video on Capitol Police letting people into the Cap? Yes, I did. And you're right. There were some, at some point in time, the police did let some of the people into the Capitol. But I also saw in video a lot where they broke down windows and broke down doors, okay, and you had two sides of the Capitol. And Rob, I'm going to send you the information about the two sides of the Capitol and the timelines.
I'm aware.
Because,
I'm aware of it.
yeah.
You don't
No, because what you're saying is what you're saying is actually not correct there. So conspiracy to defraud Trump and people for U.S. 4 years. Okay, I want to put this up there because the truth of the matter is I want everybody to be able to at least see that I'm putting up both sides. Okay?
Where are the placards that Chris mentioned about wanting to murder Mike Pence? I've never seen them on video or a still photograph of them, and the whole Capitol's covered with that. Where is that at?
Chris Hurt, go ahead.
The answer is we can post links to where there are still photographs of kill Pence signs. So yeah, I think we can come through. But here's also another fact. There's a couple of facts here. One fact is, why did any of this happen on January 6th? Because an essential element of being in a democracy and being president, you expect a little bit more of a president than you expect of a rank and file politician. And part of that is the peaceful transfer of power, even when you think you've been cheated. I think one of the interesting elements, and it'll surprise some people that I do this, is, a lot more cheating probably happened to Richard Nixon in 1960 than happened to Donald Trump by any stretch of the imagination. Yet Richard Nixon came out when many of the same tactics were being proposed and said, you know what? It doesn't matter ultimately if I win or lose. What matters is the republic. And it puts an interesting twist on the history of what could have happened with, frankly, there were probably dead votes coming out of Chicago at that point, electing Jack Kennedy. But that's one important fact. Another important fact is this. The President of the United States asked Mike Pence, we know this. This is not hypothetical. Pence has admitted this. He had sat down the previous Saturday with Mike Pence, asking him to allow, not just to allow the objections, but to seek to invalidate the electors. And that's a fact because Pence, it's not hearsay. Pence has said it. So we know that ultimately Donald Trump was playing a game that was not outside of the constitutional realm. It wasn't the realm of the courts. It wasn't the realm of the Supreme Court. It was something different and something that's a little terrifying. And that's why people like Mitch McConnell and others came out and said, this is ridiculous. This wasn't a particularly close election. This is the limit. And that's why ultimately, I will tell you something. I'm going to also say Democrats are playing politics with this. There's no point in having a conviction and a trial and going through this whole dance when, frankly, nothing's going to happen. We already know that's going to happen. But they're doing this to come out and say, we want to invalidate him for running for office. Well, somebody you're turning Trump into a martyr. I actually think Republicans would be, honestly, it's in their interest to get Trump out of electoral politics because this is killing them with suburbanites. This is killing them with key constituencies they need to win elections. Having said all of that, frankly, at the end of the day, 2 weeks from now, when we go through the full trial, nothing will have changed. Nobody's attitude will have changed, and nothing will have been investigated. And I think that's ultimately the tragedy. I think Donald Trump ought to be barred from office personally as a Republican. I am the one registered Republican on this whole panel because I think it's bad for the Republican Party. But I also think that having a trial that is doing the one thing that's going to make him look like a martyr, I'm not sure it is productive. I do know this. There's a lot of people that are frustrated. There's a lot of people and Donald Trump never had the integrity to say, you know what, there were irregularities in this election. I don't agree with it, but you know what? The Electoral College has spoken. I'll see you in 4 years. If he had done that on December 19th, and right now, none of this, not only would there be no impeachment, everybody would be basically starting their campaign for Donald Trump's election and being the next Grover Cleveland. And that's the danger of the man, that he doesn't know when to quit.
Rob, last statement. Go ahead.
Well, I think that's the marvelous performance of the man, Chris. It's an exact opposite view. It is he doesn't know when to quit, and he shouldn't quit because, as you said, it's about the republic. It wasn't really about him. None of the people, my support of him was not about him at all. You know that there's a personal issue between the two of us that I, quite frankly, did not deserve, and I have no love for this man as a person, but the policies that he brought to the republic and the republic's integrity is what mattered in this election. And with all of this mail-in and these rule changes and all of the irregularities in the numbers and the machines, not changing votes, but machines being able to be hooked to the internet and having data stored and cached overseas, all of those are facts. If you don't believe me, look at the facts. Those are the facts. About those machines. I have read the audit report from Texas. So don't interrupt me. It's my turn. I didn't interrupt Chris. Okay. Come on, Steve.
You're right.
Look, those are the facts. And the fact is, it is about the republic, and that all that is happening right now, even if they don't martyr him by the Republicans taking down their own party and voting to convict the guy, Chris and Steve, is that the Democrat Party and those that are in power, and they're in power now, are inciting violence. They have been inciting violence for 4 years. They ratcheted it up starting last summer. They kept it up. And that's whose feet I put all of this violence at the feet of. It's been going on. And I guarantee you, in my expert opinion, as a bomb disposal tech, an intelligence guy, and a warrior for the United States of America, that you're going to be surprised when you see who did the pipe bombs, and that's going to lead to who did the prior planning to this event that tried to take down the United States of America, because they hit both political parties' headquarters, and I think I know who it is, and you'll be surprised. It will not be some Trump supporters and those kind of things, unless you listen to the crazy, lamestream, lying media that likes to put a narrative out. So it's about the republic. You're right. I think Mr. Trump was concerned about the republic. You can yell at him all you want about trying to use the constitutional rules and play with them like every other politician has tried to do. But that's just the way that it came down. And we've got to get this country unified, because these politicians, including Joe Biden, are not going to do it.
Okay, so my last word, and that is first, thank you very much. Obviously, I think we all agree that Donald Trump is not going to be convicted, and because of people who support him do not want him to be convicted. And again, I personally do not want him to be convicted. I just want him to tell what the truth is. Again, if there was really fraud that he was saying there was, almost every time he opened his mouth for almost 3 months, okay, it would be in the documents that his attorneys have filed. And to not put any information up there about the voter fraud, yet that was what he was telling everybody. So you want to know why people got angry? Okay, people get angry when they feel that their vote has been defrauded. So anyway, listen, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you. Good discussion.
And if I can make one shameless plug, if you enjoyed this conversation, there's more of it at thefoundershow.com with Steve, Rob, and Hi McHenry talking over this very topic for another 45 minutes. All you have to do is go to thefoundershow.com or go to the iHeartMe app, type in The Founders Show. It's the most latest episode of The Founders Show, and you can listen to this for another hour if you can stand it.
And this week's episode on robmanus.com, or the Rob Manus Show, Steve, is about election integrity with an actual person that worked on actually founded the National Election Integrity Task Force well before the November 3rd election. And there's a lot of great information there. It comes out tomorrow at about 11 o'clock Eastern on robmanus.com. Okay.
Listen, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. In the broadcast and those people who did participate, I do appreciate your participation. Thanks again, guys. Why don't you just stay right there? Let me end the broadcast.